right, listeners, buckle up, because today we're diving headfirst into the world of Herman Bavinck.
Oh yeah, Bavinck, he's a thinker, that's for sure.
That he is. And get this deep dive is built entirely on the excerpts you sent in. We're talking personalized theological exploration here.
Love it. Gotta love a customized deep dive.
Right. So Bavinck, he tackled some seriously big questions: faith, reason, how we know anything at all. Not exactly light reading, but trust me, once we untangle some of these ideas, you'll be amazed at how relevant they still are.
Absolutely. And how he wove it all together, his theology, his philosophy, even his take on science.
Exactly. He wasn't afraid to cross those traditional boundaries. Speaking of crossing boundaries, one of the excerpts you sent in really caught my eye. It's where he tackles this idea that truth, like capital T truth, is basically a perfect copy of reality. Like, imagine the world reflected in a mirror.
Okay, I think I see where this is going.
He even quotes William James, the pragmatist philosopher, who was worried this would mean the world exists in duplicate. Can you imagine? Two of everything.
Talk about an existential crisis. So, how did Bavinck respond to that?
Oh, he dove right in, as always. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, truth isn't about simply mirroring reality, it's about elevating it. He believed that knowing something, really grasping it, brings it to a higher level of existence. It's like...
Let me see if I can explain this. Imagine a musician, right? They see the notes on a page, but when they really understand the music, when they play it well, they bring something more to it. They reveal something deeper.
That's a perfect analogy. It's not just a copy anymore. It's an interpretation, a deeper expression.
Exactly. And for Bavinck, that's where God's revelation comes in, both through the natural world and through Scripture. It's not about giving us a duplicate. It's about empowering us to engage with creation, to understand it, to even be stewards of it.
Wow. Okay. I'm already feeling my brain stretching.
Yeah.
So we're not just passive observers of this copy of truth. We're active participants, interpreters even, in this grand symphony of creation.
Now you're getting it. It's like God gives us this incredible gift of consciousness, this ability to know and understand. And he invites us to use it, to explore, to discover, to create.
I love that. It's not about having all the answers neatly categorized, but about embracing the mystery, the wonder, the constant unfolding of truth.
And that's where things get really interesting, because Bavinck wasn't afraid to challenge the assumptions of his day.
Oh, no, not Bavinck. He was always up for a good philosophical debate. So what assumptions did he set his sights on?
Well, in one of the other excerpts you sent in, he takes aim at the way people were talking about evolution, particularly in how they were viewing sociology and religion.
Ah, yes, the grand narrative of human progress. Didn't he have something to say about, wasn't there a phrase he used?
A narrow strip of peoples, that's the one.
Yes. He used this incredibly vivid imagery to criticize how some scholars were basically squeezing the entirety of human history into this single line of development.
Trying to fit an entire epic novel into a single tweet.
Exactly. And Bavinck, he was never one to settle for a condensed, abridged version of reality.
Absolutely not. He believed that if evolution did occur, and he was open to that possibility, it had to be far more intricate and multifaceted than many people were portraying it to be.
Okay, so he wasn't buying into those simplistic evolutionary narratives.
Not at all. In fact, he even entertained the possibility of what's called polyphyletic evolution.
Okay,
no, it's a mouthful.
What now? Don't worry, you can use small words. We're all friends here.
Right, of course. Basically, it's the idea that life might have emerged from multiple independent origins.
Yeah.
Not just one primordial soup, but maybe several little cooking pots, each simmering with the potential for life to arise.
Multiple origins of life. That's mind-blowing. I love it. Okay, so we've got Bavinck pushing back against these overly simplistic narratives. What was it he was so concerned about?
He was wary of what we call reductionism, this tendency to reduce complex phenomena down to a single cause or a single explanation. And he saw this happening a lot, not just in science, but in philosophy and theology as well.
Ah, yes. The age-old quest for the one true answer, the single unifying theory that explains everything.
Exactly. But for Bavinck, the world was far too messy, too beautiful, too full of wonder to be confined to such neat and tidy boxes.
And that's a good reminder for all of us, isn't it? To resist the urge to oversimplify, to be open to the possibility that truth might be more complex, more nuanced, more surprising than we initially thought.
Absolutely. And that's what makes these deep dives so rewarding. Yeah. It's about embracing the mystery, the unknown, and allowing ourselves to be challenged by new ideas.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Now, speaking of embracing the unknown, you selected an excerpt where Bavinck tackles this really intriguing concept of Self-consciousness.
Ah, yes. This is classic Bavinck, diving right into the heart of what it means to be human.
Right. But he doesn't stop at just acknowledging, I think, therefore I am. He takes it a step further, doesn't he?
He does. He delves into this deeper awareness of our dependence on something beyond ourselves, a sense of being grounded in something larger than ourselves.
Okay, say more about that. What does he mean by grounded in something larger?
Well, it's like this. We look around the world, we experience life in all its complexity, and somewhere along the way, we realize we didn't create all of this. We're not the source of our own existence.
It's like that aha moment. Oh, right, I'm not the center of the universe.
Exactly. And, this ties in beautifully with another thinker you mentioned, being interested in Schleiermacher. Remember his idea of the feeling of dependence?
Oh, yeah, it's all coming together now. It's that feeling of, whoa, there's something bigger than just me out there.
Exactly. It's that inherent awareness that we're not self-sufficient, that our very being relies on something else.
And for Bavinck, this wasn't just some abstract philosophical notion. He saw real implications for how we understand knowledge itself.
Absolutely. He firmly believed that this certainty we have of our own existence, this self-awareness, it points to a reality beyond ourselves, a reality ultimately grounded in God.
It's like our own existence is kind of a clue pointing us towards something bigger. It's almost like, I don't know, a starting point from understanding the universe.
That's a great way to put it. And you know this idea of dependence, it actually leads us right into the next excerpt you selected, where Bavinck gets into the nitty-gritty of how we experience the world around us. We're talking sensation, perception, the whole 9 yards.
Oh, yeah. This is where things get really interesting. So we're moving from this big picture view of self-consciousness and dependence to what? Like a close-up on how our senses work.
Exactly. Bavinck wants to understand how we move from those raw sensory inputs to a coherent experience of the world. He calls it the coherence of consciousness.
Coherence of consciousness. That sounds, well, pretty coherent, actually. What's he getting at with that phrase?
Basically, he's grappling with this fundamental question. How do we know that our inner experiences actually correspond to an external reality?
Okay, I think I get it. Like, how can I be sure that what I experience as the color blue or the smell of coffee actually exists outside of my own head? Maybe it's all just an illusion created by my brain.
Precisely. And it's a question that has plagued philosophers for centuries. Bavinck's approach is fascinating because he doesn't try to diminish the subjective nature of experience. He fully acknowledges that each of us experiences the world through this unique lens of our own consciousness.
So how does he bridge that gap? How do we get from our subjective experiences to some kind of shared reality, some kind of truth we can all agree on?
Well, he makes this really interesting move. He argues that the very act of experiencing the world as a coherent whole, of perceiving order and patterns, points to a source of order beyond ourselves.
Wait, so he's saying that because I experience the world as a unified, somewhat stable place, that tells me something about the nature of reality itself.
Exactly. He argues that this coherence we experience isn't something we just arbitrarily impose on the world. It's not like we're all just making up our own private realities.
Right. So there's something more going on than just our individual imaginations running wild. He's suggesting there's some kind of underlying order, right?
Exactly. He believes this points to a fundamental harmony, a deep coherence, woven into the very fabric of creation.
So in a way, our ability to even experience the world coherently is evidence for God.
Precisely. For Bavinck, the fact that we can have a coherent experience of the world at all, that we can make sense of it, it points to a mind that transcends our own. He sees it as a testament to God's wisdom and power, the same wisdom and power that holds the entire universe together.
Okay, that is some next level thinking right there.
Yeah.
So to recap, our self-consciousness points to dependence, dependence points to a creator, and the coherence of our experience confirms it. Am I getting that right?
You're on a roll. Bavinck will be proud.
I hope so. This is giving me a whole new perspective on everything. But before we get too carried away, we got one more excerpt to unpack. And this time, Bavinck takes on the very nature of truth itself.
Going for the big one, are we?
Why not? Bavinck certainly didn't shy away from it. You know, this excerpt you picked out, it's like he stepped right into a debate that's still raging today. Objective truth versus subjective truth.
The age-old question. Is there one truth with a capital T, or is it all just a matter of perspective?
Right. So where did Bavinck land on this whole debate?
Well, he was nuanced, as always. He recognized the importance of individual experience, that subjective side of things. But he was also concerned about reducing truth to something completely relative.
So he saw both sides of the coin. That makes sense. I mean, we all experience the world in our own unique ways, but there also has to be some common ground, right? Otherwise, how do we even communicate?
Exactly. And Bavinck was very aware of that tension. He wasn't trying to impose some kind of rigid, one-size-fits-all definition of truth.
But he also didn't want us all running around with our own private versions of reality.
Precisely. He starts by making this distinction between two ways of thinking about truth. First, there's truth as it exists in God's mind. The absolute, unchanging, all-encompassing truth.
Okay, that makes sense. So that's like the ultimate capital T truth residing in the mind of God.
Right. But then there's truth as we humans experience and understand it. And here's where it gets interesting. Because Bavinck argues that our understanding of truth is always going to be partial, always evolving. We're finite beings, after all. We can't grasp the infinite.
So we're stuck with these limited perspectives. It's like trying to solve a puzzle, but only having a few pieces.
That's a great way to put it. We're always working with incomplete information. But, and this is crucial, Bavinck believed we can still move towards a greater understanding.
So it's not a hopeless situation. There's still a path towards truth, even if we never quite grasp the whole thing.
Exactly. He saw it as a journey, a pilgrimage. And we don't take that journey alone. We do it as a community, sharing our perspectives, learning from each other, refining our understanding along the way.
Which is, I guess, what we're doing right now, having this conversation, exploring Bavinck's ideas together.
Exactly. And, this is where Bavinck's emphasis on revelation comes back into play.
Oh, right, because we're not just left to wander around in the dark, hoping to bump into the truth.
Right. God, in his grace, has chosen to reveal himself, to make himself known, both through the natural world, through creation itself, and through Scripture.
It's like he gave us a map and a flashlight, or maybe a compass would be a better analogy. It points us in the right direction.
I like that. It's not about having all the answers right away. It's about following where the compass leads, trusting that it will guide us towards a deeper understanding.
Wow. So we've got this incredible journey ahead of us, a journey towards truth. But it's not about arriving at some final destination, some absolute certainty. It's about the journey itself, the constant pursuit, the refining of our understanding.
And remember, Bavinck was wary of those easy answers, those simplistic solutions to complex problems.
He was all about embracing the mystery, right? Acknowledging the limits of our own understanding.
Exactly. It takes humility, intellectual honesty, and a willingness to revise our assumptions along the way. But ultimately, it's a journey worth taking.
Absolutely. Well, here we are at the end of our deep dive into the mind of Herman Bavinck. And I have to say, this has been, it's been quite a journey.
It always is with Bavinck. He makes you think.
That he does. He challenges us to think differently, to see the world with fresh eyes, to never stop wrestling with those big questions of faith, reason, and the pursuit of truth.
And who knows? Maybe we'll pick up the conversation again sometime. After all, there's always more to explore.
To be continued, maybe. But for now, listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep those minds churning and those hearts seeking.